I had hoped to speak today about health care and my agenda as the chairman of the Senate's Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee. And I will speak to those concerns on another day soon. But an issue of grave importance requires immediate action. President Bush will address the nation tomorrow about his decision to send tens of thousands of additional American troops to the war in Iraq. That war is the overarching issue of our time, and American lives, American values, and America's role in the world are all at stake. If ordered into battle, we know our brave men and women will serve us with pride and valor, just as they have throughout this troubling war. All Americans will support them fully, as will those of us in Congress. We will always support our troops in harm's way. As the election in November made clear, the vast majority of Americans oppose the war in Iraq, and an even greater number oppose sending even more troops to Iraq today. Families like the Harts and all Americans deserve a voice in that profound decision. Our Constitution gives them that right. The President is Commander-in-Chief, but in our democracy, he is still accountable to the people. Our system of checks and balances gives Congress, as the elected representatives of the people, a central role in decisions on war and peace. Today, therefore, I am introducing legislation to reclaim the rightful role of Congress and the people's right to a full voice in the President's plan to send more troops to Iraq. Congressman Ed Markey of Massachusetts will introduce similar legislation in the House of Representatives. Our bill will say that no additional troops can be sent and no additional dollars can be spent on such an escalation unless and until Congress approves the President's plan. Our proposal is a straightforward exercise of the power granted to Congress by Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. There can be no doubt that the Constitution gives Congress the authority to decide whether to fund military action. And Congress can demand a justification from the President for such action before it appropriates the funds to carry it out. This bill will give all Americans, from Maine to Florida to California to Alaska to Hawaii, an opportunity to hold the President accountable for his actions. The President's speech must be the beginning, not the end, of a new national discussion of our policy in Iraq. Congress must have a genuine debate over the wisdom of the President's plan. Let us hear the arguments for it and against it. Then let us vote on it in the light of day. Let the American people hear, yes or no, where their elected representatives stand on one of the greatest challenges of our time. Until now, a rubber stamp Republican Congress has refused to hold the White House accountable on Iraq. The American people sent a clear message in November that we must change course in Iraq and begin to withdraw our troops, not escalate their presence. The way to start is by acting on the President's new plan. An escalation, whether it is called a surge or any other name, is still an escalation. and I believe it would be an immense new mistake. It would compound the original misguided decision to invade Iraq. We cannot simply speak out against an escalation of troops in Iraq. We must act to prevent it. Our history makes clear that a new escalation in our forces will not advance our national security. It will not move Iraq towards self-government, and it will needlessly endanger our troops by injecting more of them into the middle of a civil war. Some will disagree. Listen to this comment from a high-ranking American official. It became clear that if we were prepared to stay the course, we could help lay the cornerstone for a diverse and independent region. If we faltered, the forces of chaos would smell victory, and decades of strife and aggression would stretch endlessly before us. The choice was clear. We would stay the course, and we shall stay the course. That's not President Bush speaking. It's Lyndon Johnson speaking 40 years ago, ordering 100,000 more American soldiers to Vietnam. Here's another quotation. The big problem is to get territory and to keep it. You can get it today, and it'll be gone next week. That is the problem. You have to have enough people to clear it, enough people to preserve what you have done. That is not President Bush on the need for more forces in Iraq. It is President Johnson in 1966 as he doubled our military presence in Vietnam. Those comparisons from history resonate painfully in today's debate on Iraq. In Vietnam, the White House grew increasingly obsessed with victory and increasingly divorced from the will of the people and any rational policy. The Department of Defense kept assuring us that each new escalation in Vietnam would be the last. Instead, each one led only to the next. There was no military solution to that war, but we kept trying to find one anyway. And in the end, 58,000 Americans died in the search for it. Echoes of that disaster are all around us today. Iraq is George Bush's Vietnam. Such an escalation would be a policy of desperation built on denial and fantasy. It is stay the course under another name. It will not resolve the Iraq War, but it will exact a fearsome new toll in American lives and further weaken our nation. The American people are also well aware that the military action authorized by Congress in 2002 was for a very different war than we face today. Our troops are now caught in the crossfire of a civil war, a role that Congress has not approved and that American people rejected in November. Many of us felt the authorization to go to war was a grave mistake at the time. I've said that my vote against the war in Iraq is the best vote I've cast in my 42 years in the United States Senate. But no matter what any of us thought then, the Iraq war resolution is obviously obsolete today. It authorized a war to destroy weapons of mass destruction. But there were no weapons of mass destruction to destroy. It authorized a war with Saddam Hussein. But today, Saddam is no more. It authorized a war because Saddam was allied with al-Qaeda, but there was no alliance. The mission of our armed forces today in Iraq bears no resemblance whatever to the mission authorized by Congress. President Bush should not be permitted to escalate the war further and send an even larger number of our troops into harm's way without a clear and specific new authorization from Congress. This Congress cannot escape history or its own duty. If we do not learn from the mistakes of the past, we are condemned to repeat them. We must act, and act now, before the President sends more troops to Iraq, or else it will be too late. The legislation that we introduced today is brief but essential. It requires the President to obtain approval from Congress before he sends even more American soldiers to Iraq. And it prohibits the President from spending taxpayer dollars on such an escalation unless Congress approves it. Our proposal will not diminish our support for the forces we already have in Iraq. We will continue to do everything we can to make sure they have all the support that they truly need. Even more important, we will continue to do all we can to bring them home safely. The best immediate way to support our troops is by refusing to inject more and more of them into the cauldron of a civil war that can be resolved only by the people and government of Iraq. The casualties are high. The war is long. The time is late. But as Tennyson said, "Come, my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world." Those words speak clearly to all of us today. And we are inspired anew to wage this battle by the concluding line of that great poem, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. Thank you very much.